Welcome, my friends. Welcome to my world. I'm your host, Kevin Rutherford. It is Wednesday, April 27th. That means it's Destination Health Day, and we have got a jam-packed day lined up today. We have got a lot going on, so we're going to get to it here pretty quickly. We have two great guests joining us today. They'll be joining us here in just a couple minutes. Then after the first hour, I'll be joined by our very own resident FNTP, Lauren Hickson, and Lauren and I are debuting a new show today here on the Audio Road Network. It's After Hours with Kevin and Lauren. We are primarily going to focus on bringing you some discovery calls and one-on-ones, how the program works, the things we work on. We've got some great stories. I don't want to tell you too much because that's what we're going to do today. Lauren and I are going to introduce the show and the program, let you know how that works. We'll be doing this every week as part of Destination Health. And then after that, we're still not finished. We are debuting another show, not here on the Audio Road Network, but this is exclusively for members of HealthyTribe.com. So if you're not a member, or you are and you know somebody else who should be a member, you could always gift them a membership, or you could just let them know about it. Every week, Lauren will be doing a live video Q&A. Today, we're going to attempt to get both of us on there. It's kind of a new feature. We've just started to roll out on HealthyTribe.com, so that's part of what we're doing right now, playing with all the technology. So today we're going to try to do both of us in there live, and if it works out, then there will probably be other times where I will join Lauren for that feature, but Lauren will be doing a live Q&A video on Healthy Tribe every week. So we're excited about all of these shows and features. It's just starting to come together. We're going to be rolling new shows out as we go. So stay tuned. We have got a lot going on today. I'm going to bring in our guest and just get right to this. I've got a lot I want to talk about today, but I want to talk about it with the guests. So first up, returning to the show, Stanford Graham. He's the executive director of Sanacor International. They're the producer of the most advanced nitric oxide supplement anywhere. In fact, I've told the story. We were working on one, and when we saw theirs, we waved the white flag, gave up, and said, we're just going to partner with them because we were nowhere near the product they already had. So we're excited. It's one of our best sellers in the store right now. We'll be talking about that. And, Stanford's got a lot going on, but I think the easiest way to get to it all is to just bring him in and get started. So, Stanford, welcome back.
Good morning, Kevin. It's great to be back. Thank you.
Boy, we have got a lot to talk about today. I thought I had a lot to talk about, and you and I have talked many times. There's a lot of topics we're both interested in, but I also got a bio on you, and I don't remember seeing some of this. I mean, we're going to talk about a lot of the things you do. You've got a crazy record for the 50 miles men run. I think that's just incredible, but I had no idea that you were so heavily involved in our food supply chain and that whole issue.
Well, yeah, I've been involved in that for several years, and that's becoming more of an issue, isn't it?
It sure is. Yeah.
I've been involved in whole food. My interest, Kevin, in whole food from a nutritional perspective has been for decades. I've made a practice of eating well for a long time, over quite a period of time, and just keeping active. And it ultimately became really important to me to know not just what I want, not to have available what I wanted to eat and when, but wherever I wanted it. Instead of having to ask, for instance, for permission through a window, to somebody please give me some food that I don't know where it comes from. I don't know who's prepared it. I don't know the condition of your, kitchen. So it's put it in a bag and give it You know?
Yeah. And I definitely want to come back to that, and I want to talk about it. But I also want to talk about Cardio Miracle. And, before we do that, I think it will be best if we just bring John in as well, and we can just all talk about this because I've got some new questions. I mean, I understand the product. We've been we researched it a lot. Like I said, we were working on, I want to say something similar, but we were nowhere near what this was. So we scrapped ours, and we are now selling yours, and we love it. So I'm going to bring John in, and we can just all talk about this together. John Hewlett is the founder and formulator of Cardio Miracle. So, John, welcome.
Kevin, thank you. It's delightful to be with you. We are just so pleased to be a part of Let's Truck and the great message you're doing for what I kind of call, if they're not the first responders, they're darn close. That's the great truckers in our country.
Boy, I've been doing this for almost 40 years. I've been involved in the trucking industry. I'm third generation. My grandfather was an owner-operator. At one point, I had 4 brothers, 2 brother-in-laws, a couple cousins, uncles. I don't know. Everybody seemed to be in trucking when I was growing up. Can I start off with what might be a really stupid question?
Sure.
Chemistry is not my strong point, and I know that we're going to be talking about nitric oxide. There's something we've been dealing with in trucking for over a decade now. One of our biggest issues, I've talked about it, feels like about 1 million hours in the last 10 or 12 years, and it's the emission standards we've had to go through in trucking over the last decade plus. Remember when cars went through all the emissions in the 70s? And they were junk. They were horrible. Sure. It was a disaster. We finally got through it, and nobody even realizes it's an issue anymore. Well, we just went through that in trucking. Started around 03, 04. We had a standard we had to meet in 04, another standard in 07, 08, and then one in 10 and 11. And now we have a new one again coming up in 2027. And one of the things we have to deal with, we refer to it as NOx. I believe it's capital N-O small x. I've always thought that was nitric oxide. Can you help me with this?
Well, I'm not a chemist either. I'm actually just kind of a normal guy who was in the financial world for 30 plus years. And then I literally, my life was turned around when I discovered that a nitric oxide supplement could completely reverse my blood work and my dependence on pharmaceuticals, and potentially looking square in the eye with quadruple bypass. And so the last 15 years, I've been a sponge on the nitric oxide side. Stan's probably a better physiologist than I am, but I would suspect that, one of the things that nitric oxide is somewhat related to carbon dioxide, and I'm sure the NOx factor is the fact that there are gases in the nitrogen and oxygen levels, and the X usually usually connotates something that's not very good. So it's probably something to do with the with the emissions and the particulates that are in that type of emission. Where one of the interesting things that Stanford's probably mentioned before on your broadcast is that nitric oxide is the third essential gas that's produced in the lining of your arteries. And so you have oxygen, carbon dioxide, of course, coming in and out of the lungs. The nitric oxide is produced in the lining of the arteries. And it's been said, even by some of the top research in the world, it's the third essential gas because it regulates the oxygen and carbon dioxide in your body. And you know that if you don't get enough oxygen, things don't go very well. And if you have too much carbon dioxide, obviously things don't go well either. So nitric oxide is kind of the air traffic controller, or the dispatcher, let's say, of the blood and the organs and virtually every bodily function in the body. So it's really important as you age, you produce less nitric oxide innately, unless you are vigorously exercising every day and doing a number of other things. But even that is often not enough. And so supplementing to increase the body's ability to make and maintain nitric oxide becomes life-altering and in many cases life-sustaining.
Isn't the fact that...
Kevin,
jump in there.
Let me give you the answer on the specific question. One of the things that makes John's discovery so remarkable, the nitric oxide, its chemical composition is one nitrogen molecule and an oxygen molecule. The nitrogen dioxide, or what they call NOx, like NOx, is a one nitrogen molecule and two oxygen molecules. So the chemical composition is different.
Got
it's
it.
Interesting that you asked the question, because before 1992, the research scientific world believed that nitric oxide was a noxious gas. And there was science that led up to a point in time in 1992 when that year nitric oxide was declared by Science Magazine the molecule of the year, which came as a consequence of researchers discovering that nitric oxide was not merely what they thought as a noxious gas, but actually was a life-sustaining molecule, as well as a not just life-sustaining, but also a molecule necessary for life. And so, between 1992 and 1998, nitric oxide goes from being something that's thought to be a noxious gas to, in 1998, there's a Nobel Prize award given to three scientists who discovered, as John explains, that it's actually the molecule that creates the production or that's created by this interior lining of your blood vessels. And actually is the staple, as they discovered, the award was given to them for this molecule being the reason for maintaining, or the staple molecule for maintaining, the healthy cardiovascular system. So kind of a Cinderella, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of molecule. It went from being like a Cinderella girl cleaning out the fireplace to the queen of communication, is actually what they called it in that 1992 article.
Yeah, it's when we talk about, discoveries like this happening in 1998, that's like yesterday when you're talking about, discoveries about the human body. It's crazy to think that we didn't know something this important that recently.
You're right, Kevin. One of the things that's interesting that I was actually quite discouraged, because in 2007, when I went from a very successful financial planning and insurance career, in fact, I used to do business with trucking companies, petroleum companies, and so that's why I have such a high regard for truckers. I remember going and doing 401k presentations in the Midwest with groups of truckers and helping them with their financial thing. But one of the things that I learned when I became what I've been referred to as the Johnny Appleseed of nitric oxide is that it takes 20 years to get from the lab to the general public, and part of that is because we have big pharma in the way that's trying to protect their own interests instead of the worrying about the human condition. And so that's why one of the problems, but the other is the communication and the advertising, the marketing. I mean, it was only a decade ago that vitamin D came to the forefront, and that was kind of an accident. It was when Dr. Oz, Oprah's buddy, ended up having Dr. Mercola on, and he talked about vitamin D. I remember the episode, and I was an advocate of vitamin D3, but I really didn't know that much about it. And now vitamin D is, generally accepted as one of the essentials of the immune system and one of the highest online searched for the benefit. And ironically, in our last scientific investment of a couple $100,000, we've determined that our delivery with nitric oxide of vitamin D3 is by far more absorbable and bioavailable than any other application of vitamin D3. So we're very excited that we have now scientifically proven that our delivery with nitric oxide opening up the arterial wall makes all of our other 50 plus ingredients more absorbable and more useful instead of just being expensive urine, which is what most supplements are.
Yeah, so many things I want to talk about in here. I keep making notes as both of you two are talking. I have a feeling it's going to be a long show today, but it's going to be a good one, and I'm excited because this is really good stuff. I've been following Dr. Mercola for years. I actually got a chance to meet him at the same conference I met Stanford at. And he has done so much for vitamin D awareness, and now we kind of realize it should have not been called a vitamin. It's probably more like a hormone. It's so powerful. But I think
hormone. Correct.
I think you're doing with nitric oxide the same thing. Really, really focusing on it, bringing it to the forefront, and I hope we see that same kind of adoption. And to find out that they're actually very interactive is interesting as well. I do want to go back to something you said. I'll make this short. I've told it before. One of my not so great business ideas, I started doing taxes and accounting for owner-operators and drivers way back in the early 90s. And I started seeing, because I got to see all of their financial data. When you can see somebody's tax return, you know the whole picture of their financial life. And I started seeing that these guys were self-employed. They were doing nothing for retirement. And I thought, wow, this is someplace they really need help with. I can help them with their taxes and their accounting, but I really want to help them understand that they've got to start putting some money aside and investing, and they don't want to be driving till they fall over dead at 82. So I went back to school. Took me 3 years. I became a CFP, a certified financial planner, passed the test the first time, which was not easy. I think the year I passed, 47% of the people that took it passed. And they only give it once a year. They did back then. And then I went out and started setting up retirement accounts for drivers. One of the tough parts was that's a state thing. You've got to be licensed in every state, and you have to pay fees to every state. And, I would get one new client in a state, and I'd have to go pay all the licensing fees and go through all the paperwork. And I was really struggling to grow that business. I could not get people interested. I can be pretty persuasive, but I was struggling, and I was losing money like crazy because of all the fees I was paying out. And honestly, when you start somebody on a retirement account, $50 or $75 a month, which is, where we had to start, as the financial planner, you make pennies. And you should. You shouldn't be able to get a lot of money when, you're trying to help somebody invest like that. But ultimately, I had to give it up. And not long after I kind of failed at it, and I was struggling to figure out why I thought it was such a good idea and it didn't work, I read a statistic that not only shocked me, but kind of explained. The average lifespan for a career male truck driver is less than 60. One of the reports I saw put it at 57. Well, hell, why would they bother to plan for retirement? They're not going to live into retirement, the odds are, which was really shocking, but it also kind of pointed out why it was such a bad business idea, which ultimately eventually led me to the place where we are today is, first I want to help make them successful in business and their career. I want to get them really healthy during that time, and then, maybe at some point we'll get them living long enough that I can go back to helping them with retirement.
Kevin, it's interesting because before you went on to that, I was going to say I would suspect it's similar to an offensive lineman in the NFL. life expectancy at about 60 years old, which is, 15, 16 years, a decade and a half less than the average or more. And obviously, according to statistics, still half of our great drivers smoke.
Yes.
They have a challenge with their height being about a foot short for their weight, which is my problem myself, and I'm not a trucker. But I'm not like Stanford running, 12 miles every day. But the reality is one of the miracles and one of our missions is to help people make up for some of the challenges they're dealing with. By providing Cardio Miracle. And let me just say to those listening, if you're concerned about diabetes, complications of diabetes, if you're concerned about high blood pressure and having a stent or a heart attack or those types of things, I'm absolutely convinced that if you increase your nitric oxide and you supplement with a product like Cardio Miracle, you will have the best chance of living the most functional, healthy life you possibly can, regardless of your occupation. And interesting enough, and this isn't a medical claim, this is science here, science will tell us that even black lung for coal miners or those impacted with emphysema, nitric oxide actually has benefits for that. And so the reality is nitric oxide helps clean out both the lymphatic system and helps it function better, and it also helps reduce the inflammatory condition that is provided in the body by nicotine and by caffeine in particular. And I'd just like to tell our friends and who are listening, we need you healthy on the road. You have a huge responsibility. You know that. You feel that. And there's a couple of key points you need to be aware of. The nitric oxide that we're talking about, which is essential to your life and health, is diminished through stress and fear. Now, most truckers I know aren't afraid of things, but the stress of dealing with all the horrible drivers in America that they have to deal with all the time is shocking. And then when you add the caffeine and tobacco, both diminish your nitric oxide in your body. That's the reason why the predominance of diabetes and heart conditions, cardiovascular issues, and then ultimately cancers are able to proliferate in somebody who has diminished nitric oxide and vitamin D3. So if you supplement with a high-quality nitric oxide supplement that has been scientifically proven to extend nitric oxide for over 24 hours, far longer than beets, super beets, arginine, whatever, will not only see amazing increases in your ability to breathe, in your clarity of mind, and if you can start substituting a Cardio Miracle while you're on the road and when you're at home for the majority of your caffeinated beverages, then you won't have the crash, you'll sleep better, you'll have less sleep apnea issues, and interesting enough, one of the other side effects of nitric oxide is you'll have a more robust sex life, which doesn't help you, well, it depends on the road, but the reality, once you get home, you want to be able to at least perform a little bit. So the reality is, for a truck driver, there's a lot at risk here and a lot of benefits from a nitric oxide supplement, which we believe ours is the finest in the world.
Yeah, like I said, go ahead, Stanford.
I was going to back up what John says about, stress. When we're under stress, and even psychological stress, in addition to physical stress and or mental stress. One of the things that happens when our body, our systems are stressed is our cortisol levels are increased. We experience an increase in our adrenal glands get active, and we start experiencing chemical reactions in our body that come as a consequence of fight or flight syndrome, right? Where we're actually in a sense of danger. The body, when it senses stress, it believes it's in danger, like immediate danger, like I'm standing a few feet away from a man-eating tiger or something like this. And so the body reacts to physiologically to stress in that same way. And so we get our adrenal glands are overproducing because we're under stress all the time. Our adrenal glands are overproducing. And as a result of that overproduction of our cortisol levels go up, because our body makes cortisol to tell the adrenal glands to calm down, to tell our immune system to calm down. And at a certain point in time, when we're under constant stress, our immune system loses its ability to listen to cortisol. And that's what puts us in this chronic inflammatory state, as you know. When we're in a chronic inflammatory state, that chronic low-grade inflammation is the basis for all metabolic diseases. And one of the dots I wanted to connect with you and the truckers out there is when we're under stress, one of the things that the body produces in this little circle of biological reactions is a synthase molecule called arginase. And arginase eats an amino acid called arginine. When we're stressed, our body produces arginase, and this molecule arginase eats arginine. And as it happens, arginine is a primary fuel for our blood vessels that our blood vessels need to produce nitric oxide. So when we're under stress, there is a natural downregulation of nitric oxide production in the body because the fuel that our bodies need to produce it is consumed by other processes. So when John talks about supplementation and this being better than, say, eating a bushel of beets, it's true. One of the studies on this product that was performed at Ohio University demonstrated that bathing human endothelial cells, these interior cells of the blood vessels, to CardioMiracle, because it was specifically on this product, immediately induced those cells to produce nitric oxide. It did so for over a 24-hour extended period. The consequence of that conclusion, of that finding, was that the body then had the ability to experience all the biological benefits of long-term bioavailable, that's free nitric oxide. So this nitric oxide molecule, which is called the primary communication molecule in the body, can communicate to the different systems, different organs, different synthase processes to help the body function at a very high level. So, as John points out, come back to the issue of stress. It has real biological functions that downregulate, that decrease our cardiovascular capacity, that decrease our oxygenation capacity, that thicken our blood, affects our blood viscosity, our blood flow, our oxygen supply. Ischemia is a major problem. Lack of oxygen in the blood leads to lack of oxygen in the cells. And so being without sufficient nitric oxide, and there are thousands of research articles we could point to demonstrate this very clearly, but having low nitric oxide production in the body, it leads to systemic challenges.
So I had a ton of notes here about things I wanted to talk about with you guys today, and I just threw them out the window. Not literally, because I don't litter. Because I didn't know that a lot of what you just said, and you and I have talked about a lot of things, but in the last year, my focus, almost 100%, has been on working on a stress protocol, and there have been a couple little of pieces missing that I just kind of couldn't connect the dots on. We actually worked with Garmin. We developed a watch just for truck drivers. Garmin has watches for people who scuba dive and run and bicycle and, all kinds of crazy, really specific features. I
use one myself. They're a great company.
Yeah, so we actually developed one for truck drivers. for their unique situation. And one of the measurements on the watch actually measures stress in real time, something that I just haven't been able to do. And by using it myself for a year and developing all these protocols, I learned a lot. In the beginning, my thought process was we have to help people avoid stress because there's too much stress in their life. So, we wanted to teach people about mindfulness and meditation and relaxation techniques and just get away from it all. And that's a small part of it. What I really kind of discovered, and the best analogy I could come up with, is stress is a lot like a muscle in our body. We have to be able to build our stress muscle, to build some resilience against stress. Just trying to avoid stress thinking it's going to make us happy or healthy was a mistake. That would be like me telling people you should avoid too much exertion because that just wears your body out. Well, that's dumb. That's not true. We need to build the muscles in our body, including our heart. And the more we use those things, the stronger they get. So what I discovered over this year was stress is exactly like that. We don't want to just try to avoid it all the time. We would just get weaker and weaker. We actually have to learn how to build our body's resilience to stress so that it can actually handle that stress without breaking down and getting weak and unhealthy. So I started, using the watch to find out there's actually a term for this kind of stress, and I just drew a blank on it. Stress that actually builds our stress resistance. It'll come to me in a second. But so I started looking at things like, exposure to high heat really stresses our body quickly, just a hot shower. But if you use that properly, it can actually start to build that stress muscle. Exposure to extremely cold temperatures, Wim Hof and the cold plunges, and another way of building that stress resilience. And one that I think there's probably a big tie-in here, as I was listening to John talk about nitric oxide being kind of the regulator of oxygen and carbon dioxide. One of the other really powerful interventions we found for stress is the Wim Hof breathing. And what that does is really regulate oxygen and carbon dioxide in the body. And now I understand that, I've got this new piece of information that nitric oxide is a part of this. So my head's going about 100 miles an hour now trying to put all this together, and I'm sure as I get to think about it more later on, I'm going to want to get you guys back so we can talk even more about this, because I've made huge strides in this whole stress thing. There's just a couple of little pieces missing, and I think you guys have the answer to those pieces I've been missing.
Can I give you one more piece, Kevin? One more, John. One more piece, Kevin, before you leave that topic. That will really blow your mind, because John, in putting this formula together, I don't know. I don't never knew the extent to which the benefits would flow. We just found out in the last month or so from the scientific research done on this product that it also upregulates autophagy.
Oh.
So autophagy, as you know, Kevin, is the process. Autophagy comes from a Latin term that actually means self-eating. Our cells have this internal process of cleaning up the garbage, the expired proteins, and other components that our cells use internally to function. And autophagy is the process by which the cell cleans up its own bedroom, so to speak. Keeps its own environment clean. It's one of the most significant, if not the most significant, benefit of fasting and intermittent fasting, as you know.
Right.
It happens, we've just discovered through research that will be published here soon that Cardio Miracle downregulates the casein 1 cytokine and upregulates, as a result of that, autophagy's function inside our cells. So again, if this lends to mitigating against the negative consequences of stress, but also being able to deal with stress. Fasting is a great way, just like the breathing, like cold therapy. It's a way to train the body against it, to make it stronger. I think in your analogy is fantastic and spot on.
Yeah, like I said, this as both of you two are talking, these pieces are just starting to click. And, we did this because we do a lot of work one-on-one. We have we're going to be talking about it a lot later on. I'm going to bring in Lauren, and we're going to talk about, we have a 10-minute discovery call, which doesn't sound like you could do much in 10 minutes, but we actually put in at least an hour before every call. We have an online questionnaire, a NutriQ, which is a really powerful tool to find out what's going wrong with people health-wise. We look at any pharmaceuticals they may be on, any surgeries they've had, what their symptoms are, and we put a lot of work in ahead of time, and during the 10-minute call, we basically just give them a 30-day plan to work on their biggest health issue right now. It's kind of like an introduction into what we do, and we kind of jumpstart them and say, here's the biggest thing you're facing, and here's how you can improve it in the next 30 days. And then we also do one-on-ones where, after 30 days, if there are still issues, then we go more intense and dig down into them. And what we started to see, when somebody comes to us for the first time, we expect their health to be a wreck. It always is. Their blood sugar's out of control, their digestion's a wreck, their immune system's weak. That's just the norm, and we know that's what we're going to deal with. But what we started seeing a new pattern 2 years ago, we all know it's happened over the last 2 years, was that people that we had helped years ago and who had been, outrageously healthy for their age for many years now, all of a sudden started to see their health deteriorate a little bit. And at first we thought, okay, your diet's slipping, you're not doing and they would swear nothing is, and I believed them. Because I know my diet hasn't changed, and I was starting to see some of these things. And what we finally realized, when we would look at our NutriQ, we would see the scores would go up on 3 areas, and it would all be hormone related. Their adrenal scores would go up, their pituitary scores would go up, and it dawned on us, hey, dummy, it's not diet. As much as we like to focus on diet, this is all stress. These are all stress issues we're looking at. And I think we would all agree that the world has become a much more stressful place in the last couple of years. So that's what really pushed me to start doing all the research on stress and the testing and the developing the protocols. And it's been my focus for an entire year. And like I said, there were still these little pieces that are missing. And I absolutely believe that things happen for a reason. When you're really focused on something and you're really trying to do something good, things happen. What were the odds of you and I meeting in San Diego and starting down this path? And now I understand why it happened.
I would acknowledge that too, Kevin. There was a reason. And it's great. It's an honor to be with you and Lisa and the Let's Truck organization. It's an honor to be with John and work with Cardio Miracle. It truly is.
The product Kevin, itself is amazing. It's becoming one of our best sellers. As much as I know with our lifestyle today and our diet, I know we need supplementation. But I was so anti-supplement for so many years because I just did not see results. I saw people waste a lot of money. I wasted a lot of money. I tried a lot of supplements. I just swore they were all crap. They're all garbage. None of this stuff does anything. And then what happened was I realized, look, you can't outwork a bad diet and you can't out-supplement a bad diet. So my mistake was thinking all supplements were just garbage when there are a couple things I was missing. One, the supplement has to be right. There is a lot of stuff on the market that is just garbage. And unfortunately, it's usually the stuff that all the money is spent on marketing, and some of the worst products are the most popular, unfortunately. But then I also realized that if you're not going to radically clean up your diet, a lot of this stuff may or may not help much at all. So now I still have some of that left over. I'm not a huge believer in just running to supplements first. There are only, I test all kinds of supplements, but once I'm done testing them, I tend to not take them. I'm bad at it. I don't really like to. There are only a couple that I take every day, and they haven't changed much in a couple of years. I do supplement vitamin D every day because I just can't seem to get enough of it in my diet or from sunshine. I supplement some minerals because no matter how clean I eat, I seem to get some mineral imbalances. And now, after a couple years, I use Cardio Miracle every day. Did I lose
Kevin? I wanted I just wanted to make sure I wasn't talking over anyone.
Okay.
The one thing that's important to know that what you're in your quest is if you look at nose breathing actually creates nitric oxide, and that's why it works. The challenge is it's not adequate to solve atherosclerosis or clogging of the arteries. It's not adequate just nose breathing, but it does help. What it does is it helps release nitric oxide, which then increases carbon dioxide in the blood, which then releases oxygen. And so when you breathe through your mouth, it doesn't effectively release nitric oxide. So doing deep nasal inhalations and breathing techniques and breathing more through your nose during exertion, etc., actually releases nitric oxide. It's the body's most powerful antioxidant and anti-inflammatory. And one thing I'll say, Kevin, because if I put myself on a daily diet as strict as Stan is, Stan eats anchovies and mackerel on whole wheat tortillas. So some of us, and I don't know if your truckers would be into the anchovies and sardines, but they might be. But if they're normal, like some of us, and again, maybe I'm a good advocate because let me tell you something. 15 years ago, I was a walking dead man, and today I have a great life, and I'm medication free, and my cardiovascular markers are ridiculous for a person of my size and of my lifestyle. I happen to, having been a golfer in the past, and truckers are probably way too busy to be golfers, but in golf there's a term called the mulligan, and the mulligan is when you get a second shot after a bad first one. Well, I believe the Cardio Miracle is also a mulligan for the guy who isn't exercising faithfully, who isn't watching their diet as well as they should, and who has, and so instead of giving up, I believe the Cardio Miracle is hope in a glass. And if people, the truckers and the people who are looking to improve their lives a little bit at a time, start breathing through your nose, get better sleep, cut back on some of the caffeine, substitute Cardio Miracle for some of the caffeine, and you'll find you don't need the caffeine because you'll be alert. You'll recover well from your long travels. You'll feel better when you're driving. You'll be more alert, and you won't have to necessarily depend on artificial stimulants. This has all natural, life-giving, oxygen-delivering ingredients, which is very helpful.
It's interesting that you brought up, the sardines and the mackerel and the diet part of it. You'd be interested to know that our tribe, our real followers, are some of the most dedicated to the diet that I've seen. I'm shocked at how dedicated our drivers have become to what most people would consider a very extreme diet. No grains whatsoever. A lot of organ meats and seafood. We sell sardines, mackerel, all of that in our store. Some of the best quality you can get. Actually, we have to look for a new supplier. John, when we were in San Diego, one of the other connections I made was with the owner of Vital Choice Seafood, and that became, it may have happened at the same table there that day on the last day at lunch. Yeah, that's right. We were all there at the same table that last day at lunch. They've been a great supplier of us. Did you realize they got bought?
No.
You would not believe who bought them. Vital Choice Seafood. The owner started as a fisherman himself in Alaska, one boat, grew this amazing company, which is the best quality seafood ever. And they got bought by 1-800-Flowers.
Oh, my God.
Is that bizarre or what? So, unfortunately, they will no longer wholesale to us. But the good news is Lisa has just become amazing, and we found a supplier that the quality is every bit as good, but they have some really, really exciting products. So we loved Vital Choice. It was really sad to see them, kind of disappear for us. But Lisa worked hard. We have a new supplier we'll be rolling out soon. Not only...
Hey, Kevin, one
yeah, sure, go ahead.
Because of diet, here's one of the things I point out here that we discovered in the last few months through this phenomenal in silico research conducted by a biotech research lab doing all this phenomenal work with us, is that Cardio Miracle induces. There's this the chemist that discovered this calls this feedback, what he calls the feedback loop, calls it exquisitely beautiful. Here's what happens with Cardio Miracle. You take it, your nitric oxide production goes up, your vitamin D3 production goes up because the nitric oxide molecules signals or communicates to the fat cells in which are storing inert vitamin D to release those inert molecules that then travel to the liver for hydrolyzation and then to the pancreas for secondary hydrolyzation, producing vitamin D3, highest quality that you can get, but endogenously. It helps you produce Cardio Miracle. The science shows induces your body to produce D3 from internal resources. It converts inert vitamin D to active vitamin D3. And that's why with the thousands of tens of thousands of customers who have Cardio Miracle, there's story after story after story of people getting their vitamin D3 scores back, and they're remarkably increased within 30, 60 days. And so John had been looking to connect the dots between the body's internal production of nitric oxide and why vitamin D3 would increase as well in people that were experiencing increased production of nitric oxide. Well, we've got the science back on it. In fact, there'll be a research article published in one of the top medical research magazines about this endogenous production of vitamin D3. And its bioavailability and efficacy are off the charts. And so, it kind of, one of the values that I see Cardio Miracle is that you can, taking Cardio Miracle, you can drop off some of the other supplements that might be in your cabinet.
Yes,
because as John indicated earlier, it actually, one of the other things that Cardio Miracle does, the science will demonstrate this as well. This article coming out is that it increases the endocytosis of your cells, which means your cells go through a process called endocytosis, which is the fact that the cell wall creates like a transport hub, opens up a small transport hub, and then envelops and draws within the cell the things that it needs. And as it happens, Cardio Miracle increases the endocytosis of the plasma wall of our cells. This has never been observed in science before, but this will be coming out in, like I said, in the next couple of months in this in the article that's now being peer reviewed. So it's a phenomenal outcome, and again, this is happening while your autophagy is improving. Your cytokines like TGF beta and TNF are being downregulated. Your ROS, your reactive oxygen stages, your reactive oxygen species are being downregulated, while your vitamin D is being upregulated in your cell. The plasma wall of your the plasma on your cell wall is being that health is being improved to make the exterior of your cell healthy and the interior of your cell healthy. So it's really fascinating, absolutely fascinating dots that get connected with this supplement, Cardio Miracle.
So one of the things I've learned in studying nutrition and physiology and biology as much as I have, and I think you guys can help me with this because I think it's all starting to come together, why this product specifically is so powerful and we see so many good results. I started hearing about and reading about nitric oxide, and it's this incredible signaling molecule, and we had no idea, and it's new. And, of course, we looked at beets first. That's like the first thing that we know, a nutrient that can increase this. And, of course, Super Beets, the big national product. Again, a lot of money put into marketing. And I was recommending it because I really didn't know what else to recommend. And we were trying to help people with this. We weren't getting the kind of results we had hoped for. And that's why I started thinking, well, maybe we need to develop our own product and maybe we can figure out why this isn't as effective as it sounds like it should be. And we were working on ours. And again, I think things happen for a reason. It was a tough decision for us to scrap that project. We put a lot of time and money into it. But Stan, when you showed me this product and I started looking at it and reading about it and thinking about it, I thought it's the responsible thing to do. Why bring a product to market that I'm going to want to try to sell people when there's already something better? But I think one of the things that I'm really starting to see here, and again, I've learned this in a lot of other areas, is that it's never one nutrient or compound that does this. I think one of the mistakes we've made in health and nutrition is we keep trying to focus on one thing. They say, oh, look, garlic has got these crazy compounds, and we focus on one and we extract it out of there and say this is going to work. When really there's this whole concept of cofactors. And, something as simple as vitamin A, D, E, and K, they at least have to have some fat available just to get them to absorb. So a lot of people take just those simple vitamins and get no benefit because they were eating a low-fat diet, which is a huge mistake. So this concept of cofactors. And I think what I'm starting to kind of catch on to here with Cardio Miracle is you have put together all of the cofactors to make this all work.
Well, let me pay a compliment to John by jumping in. We were on a phone call with the lead scientists, chemists that are doing the research on Cardio Miracle. John had asked them to create a list of all these 50 plus ingredients in Cardio Miracle, to list them by rank in order of effect, impact, efficacy, etc., which they said they could do. But then the chief chemist said, John, this isn't about a single instrument, it's about an orchestra.
I like that. Of
the 53 ingredients, Kevin, in Cardio Miracle, there are 770 naturally occurring products. That is molecular compositions.
Wow.
There are almost 800 mechanisms of action. That is molecular networks that communicate with other molecular networks in the body to create physiological and biological consequences. So it's an extraordinarily complex orchestra that plays a beautiful symphony because you're introducing this orchestra into, the greatest music hall on the planet, which is the human body.
Yeah,
and so
I just want to jump in there real quick. As complicated as all this is, and I know we've gotten a little off into the weeds, but I love this because it helps me. I'm learning a lot. The answer here for the people who are listening is, as complicated as all this is, the answer is really simple, because this is a really easy product to incorporate into your day. A scoop in your water in the morning, sip on it while you're driving. Another one at night. And again, here's something else we see with drivers. It's a chronic problem. They're chronically dehydrated. A lot of people are. Drivers tend to be even worse. They will actively not drink because that means they might have to stop more often during the day, and they want to get in as many miles as they can. We've tried to convince them your health is not worth skipping that 20 or 30 minute stop you might have to take. You've got to stay hydrated, and I'm bad at that. I get really busy during the day and I forget to drink. Cardio Miracle has made 2 improvements for me. That's 2 more 12 to 14 ounce servings of water I get every day that I wasn't getting before. So it's really easy to take. It tastes great. It's easy just to sip on. So I love diving deep into the science and, really starting to put these pieces together and understanding why this is so powerful now. But ultimately, for the end user, it's really simple. 2 servings a day and you get some crazy, incredible benefits.
Well, I think John, that he has made it very simple, and you're absolutely right. I'm fascinated by what it can do. Maybe even using John's golf analogy is, he plays the fairway. I'm usually playing in the rough. So, anyway, John did a remarkable job.
Yeah,
together a product that's simple to take and delightful to take, and to actually see, you can measure quantitatively, take your blood markers before and after, and you're going to be surprised.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, John, can I go back to one thing you touched on earlier?
Sure.
So, one of the things my mission is kind of always, find out what's going wrong with our tribe, primarily truck drivers, but now with health. It's been an interesting, for years when I helped truck drivers and owner-operators with things like taxes and accounting and financial planning and fuel mileage and maintenance. And really the only people who were interested in those shows were people who drove truck. It was that specific. When we branched out into health, over 8 years ago, that changed because, the truck driver who might be gone 2 or 3 or 4 weeks at a time would start eating the way we would recommend. And honestly, by the time they got home, they could have lost 30 to 40 pounds. That's pretty shocking when they walk back in the door and their spouse says, "Who the hell are you and where's my husband?" But then the next question is they want to know, how the hell did you do this? So the next thing we know, we started having spouses call our show. And then we started helping them with their children or their mother or their, friends. Or so now we've got this following outside of driving. And I also went through a pretty personal experience on this issue. My mother-in-law came to live with us for the last year of her life. We lost her a couple years ago. And she had all of the typical health issues that people have in this country when we get into our 70s and 80s. She had been diabetic for years. She had COPD. And because she was actually in our house for that year, and I do a lot of the cooking, and my wife Lisa is an awesome cook, and she, we make the kind of food that's really healthy. We reversed her diabetes. We got her off of a couple medications, and it was pretty incredible. But the one thing that was just not improving at all, and I did a bunch of research and I couldn't find anything that said it could be reversed or improved, was the COPD itself. It just continued to get worse, even though we had improved her health in a lot of other areas. You mentioned things like black lung, and is there a possibility that we could see some improvements in lung conditions like COPD?
No question. No question about it. I've seen it for 15 years. We've seen in the illnesses and things that people have experienced over the last couple of years, we've seen oxygen levels go from the high 70s to the low 90s within days after going on 4 servings a day of Cardio Miracle. So
wow.
I've seen things, because Kevin, it comes back to the basic premise. And I'm saddened because my father died at 62 of sleep apnea. My grandfather died at 66 of heart failure. My uncle died at 57 of a heart attack. And so this is very personal to me. And I'm in my 70th year, and I've spent the last 15 years trying to share with the world that there's hope. There is hope. There's hope if you've lived a lousy lifestyle. There's hope if you have chronic illness, because nitric oxide was called and is called the miracle molecule. It is essential to health and well-being, and it opens up the capillaries. That's what it does. And when you open up the capillaries, increase the blood flow, you're increasing and delivering more oxygen. We've seen my wife's mother was on supplemental oxygen all night long, started going on it during the day, could barely walk across the breadth of a bedroom to the kitchen. And within a month, she was walking around the block and was off the supplemental oxygen. Now, we can't claim that as a medical claim, but I'm just telling you what happened to her.
Exactly.
So oxygen is essential, and nitric oxide delivers more oxygen. And then if you're delivering more oxygen, obviously many of the things associated with COPD are inflammation. And if you look at the research, inflammation is the source of those lung capillaries not being able to deliver adequate oxygen. So if you can help improve and heal those capillaries of their inflammatory condition, help them replicate on a more healthy basis the next replication by having a better balance of your oxygen and nitric oxide, your oxygen and your carbon dioxide, then good things are going to happen. So there's no question that the research on oxygen delivery and pulmonary things are something that can be measurable and can be efficient. And obviously, Kevin, we stand behind our product, money back guarantee, and we want everyone to have the opportunity to partake of a better life. And whether they're strict, whether they're moderate, wherever they fall on the spectrum, everyone deserves to have a better life than one of chronic illness and debilitating lifestyle. And the other thing is, I've known a lot of truckers who, have been on the verge of losing their license because of too many diabetes markers, blood pressure markers. You know about those new requirements several years ago. And if you want to help protect your livelihood and at the same time help protect our country, which needs our truckers to be healthy and to live and to enjoy the fruits of their hard work when they do retire and be healthy enough to enjoy a retirement with their children and grandchildren, then I would say give Cardio Miracle a shot. You've got everything in the world to gain.
So I know I had you guys scheduled for an hour. The beauty of our new platform now is we have no time restrictions whatsoever. Can I keep you guys for longer?
I'm okay for a few minutes. They're trying to kick us out of our hotel room, but I'm having a great time. I came to Florida, Kevin, from the mountains of Park City, Utah, and I've told everyone I'm not coming back till it stops snowing up there. So I'm
okay.
So I'm doing great. Love to talk some more.
Okay, so when you need to drop off, you guys need to drop off, just let me know. But I've got so many notes here, and honestly, I'm going to ask you both right now. Can I get you back sometime soon? Because I'm not going to get to half of the stuff I wanted to.
we're delighted to join you once a month, Kevin, or whatever works for your schedule. We're delighted to be of a resource to some of the great patriots we believe are the people who keep our food supply and everything else going in our country. So we're all in with the truckers.
Excellent. All right. So I think I'm going to tell you something, and you're going to be shocked, and I say that tongue in cheek. Can you believe that the medical community has taken the issue of sleep apnea and turned it into a giant moneymaker in the trucking industry? Doesn't that just shock you?
Oh, certainly. Nothing. Everything that Big Pharma does is, by design into big money.
So I don't debate that sleep apnea exists, but it's like almost everything else health-wise. They identify a problem. I agree it's a problem. The solution always seems to be far more about generating, lifetime customers and revenue for them than actually fixing the problem. So the medical community, Big Pharma, and these manufacturers of sleep apnea devices managed to get, regulations put in place that allows these medical examiners to basically force these drivers into sleep apnea testing based on just things like neck size, and sure, there's some correlation, but it's not all that strong. But they're able to force these guys to take a sleep test. Sometimes they have to pay for it themselves. Many times they have to pay for it themselves, and it's expensive. And if they fail the test, and they almost always will, they're required to have a CPAP machine, and the CPAP machine is actually monitored, and they have to submit records to show that they're using it. And you know what I'm seeing? I've been watching this for years. None of these guys are getting any healthier.
No kidding. I'm surprised.
Yeah. So it's a giant scam in trucking.
Wow.
And,
I had no idea.
And we've now shown over and over and over with diet, we can do far more to improve this. Again, the CPAP machine, and I know people who have sleep apnea say, oh, I love my CPAP machine. I've never slept so good. I get that, but you should also be able to sleep that good without strapping a mask to your face and all the other issues that come with that. And if we get to the root cause of your problem, which is poor nutrition and several other things, we can fix this without you going through expensive medical testing and being tied to this machine and having a doctor look at records and say, you didn't use your machine for, this many hours like you're supposed to, and we're going to restrict you to a 3-month medical card instead of a 2-year card. And it's become a giant weapon to get more money out of these guys. And now I know we've got one more very powerful tool in this arsenal to help with sleep apnea now.
Tremendous benefit. First of all, I happen to have quite an interesting experience. I have sleep apnea, and my wife has it. I used to snore like a trooper, and probably that was weight, as well as some other genetic issues. And but my wife has the type that her brain at times tells her not to breathe. It's called central apnea. And so we both use a CPAP and have found it to be wonderful for us. My idea, though, however, is I don't think anything should be mandatory from the government. I'm totally into individual liberty. The more they regulate, the more they screw up. But I'm a much bigger advocate if somebody takes the finger test instead of the sleep test. Is ridiculous. And so I think that the nitric oxide helps heal the lungs and helps with that. Now, if I probably lost this extra amount of weight and did the nasal breathing better, I'm working on that. I think that's true. A lot of people, as they lose weight and as they get in better shape and increase their cardiovascular health, no longer require the apnea facility.
You know, one of the things that I kind of feel blessed that I get to work with this tribe is the fact that they are one of the most unhealthy populations in the country. We know how unhealthy this occupation is, and we know how unhealthy most truck drivers are. So, I kind of feel blessed that when we're able to develop these things, we get results with the worst cases. It's one thing to go grab the low-hanging fruit, and nothing wrong with this, but I know practitioners who primarily work with triathletes. Well, sure, they could use some help with nutrition and all kinds of things and performance, and I get that, but that's kind of low-hanging fruit. That's the easy case. I love the fact that we work with some of the most difficult cases around, and we're getting incredible results. And I have to give credit where it belongs to partners like you guys. There's no way I could have done 1/10 of what we've accomplished on our own. We depend on people like you, and I think we're at another huge breakthrough in some things that we can really help these guys and women and friends and spouses and non-drivers. We've got another really powerful tool and another really powerful partnership. So I just want to thank you guys.
Kevin, one other thing, and then I'll pause for a minute as I go down the elevator. But one of the things that's important that I think is critical with those who have diabetes is the biggest problem with diabetes is the complications, sight, amputation, stroke, heart attack. And so we believe that the nitric oxide and the extended vitamin D is extremely valuable in helping to support the body's fight against the ravages and complications of diabetes. And one of the other things that I wanted to mention from one of your earlier comments, you talked about the truckers being dehydrated. Part of the problem comes twofold. One, caffeine is a dehydration situation, as well as artificial sweeteners. So between artificial sweeteners and caffeine, you're dehydrating yourself in addition to. And so if a person will drink good water and water with Cardio Miracle, they're going to help solve a much better chance on the hydration side. And even regulating, we have people who their urinary habits, they're able to hold it longer, get up to fewer times in the nighttime, and those types of things, all from our Cardio Miracle usage. So there's been a lot of benefits, and that's part of the erectile dysfunction situation, is strengthening those organs in your body that need good oxygen and nutrients and replication of cells. Check it out.
Hey, one of the one of the things I should probably ask, because I don't get too involved in this, but any supply issues around Cardio Miracle? Do we have plenty? Can we order enough? Or I asked that. I would have never thought to ask that, except for the fact that I almost always have to ask that anymore.
Well, Kevin, we've been fortunate. We're ordering 6 months ahead. We're ambitious. We're investing everything possible into our supply chain issues. We're looking at backups for the supply issues, and it's a concern. And that's one of the reasons we recommend to people that they have a 2 or 3 month supply of our product once they get on it, because we just don't know. We don't know what can happen out there with the powers that be and the corruption that we're seeing in our government and regulators and everything else. So we advise most people to have a couple months supply of this great product, and but we're proactive in every possible way and making sure we're ahead of the curve, both in inventory and also in making sure that we get our supplies and we have backups and alternatives in our sourcing.
Excellent, excellent. And you mentioned something that I had a lot of notes on, and I think this probably worked out for the best. I wanted to talk to you guys about government and mandates and regulations and the vaccine, and I think it's something that all three of us are very interested in and pretty passionate about. How about if we schedule another show, and we don't even have to wait a month, where that is the topic, and we can let people know ahead of time. Today really is about health. I'm glad we spent all of this time on nitric oxide and the issues and all the things we can improve and Cardio Miracle itself. And I think that really worked out for the best, but I would love to do a show with you guys about those other issues. Is that something we could do?
We're delighted to do it. It's part of our mission, because if our businesses and our government fails us and our currency fails us, then what good is business? So we're all in when it comes to trying to save our country. And Stanford can give you a quick update. We essentially helped build the legal team that helped to get the mask mandate off in Florida last week. That was part of our legal effort with our chief legal counsel on our other lawsuits.
Yeah, so let's do this. Stanford, are you still there? I know somebody was checking out, right? We all still here?
I'm here.
Okay. Why don't we do this? I love the fact that we've really, and I want to say covered Cardio Miracle and nitric oxide. I think we touched on it. I think we got a lot of really good I know I did. I got a lot of great information. My mind's going 100 miles an hour, and I want to come back to this again. But I'm also thinking of a couple other shows that I want to do with you guys on different topics, and one of them is what's going on with the government and the mandates. So, Stanford, why don't you do this? Why don't you give us a quick Reader's Digest version of what's going on with that on the legal side and what you guys have been doing, and then let's schedule a show where we really can take a deeper dive into it. What does that sound like?
Sure, Kevin. That sounds great. Perhaps what we can do is give a summary. John mentioned the case last Monday, where a federal district court judge in Tampa, the Central District of Florida, issued a decision in the case regarding the travel mask mandate, which made mask wearing requisite on planes, trains, and automobiles, airports, train stations, etc. That everybody is so familiar with. That mandate was rejected by the court as unconstitutional last Monday, and we're very grateful to have had a part to play in that. We have some fabulous legal team. That order came as a function of an executive order signed in January of 2021 by President Biden. The court determined that the mask mandate was unconstitutional on multiple grounds. In addition, the court found that the government, the Biden administration, had violated the Administrative Procedures Act, which is actually a body of regulatory law that requires executive branch agencies like and bodies like the CDC to follow a very specific protocol in order to establish regulations in any particular area. And the court found that they had quite radically failed to abide by that, the APA, the Administrative Procedures Act. And so, really, as a consequence, just to keep it simple, the court struck the mandate down in its entirety and vacated it and dismissed the case on a prejudicial basis. So we'll see what happens. It was a magnificent win for the people of this country because it was put in place as the court found, illegally and without justification and without due process, which obviously makes it unconstitutional. We'll see what the Biden administration does now. They've talked of appeal. We're confident in the position that we've taken. Kevin, the order that the judge wrote is 59 pages.
I know.
So you don't hear too many. You don't hear too many facts and figures on the mainstream media about other than just smearing the judge. None of them have read her methodical treatise on this particular issue, and thank God we have some great judges in this country. So we're very grateful for that. We also have another case pending that was filed in the first week of March of this year to bring down the balance of the injection mandate against healthcare workers. Last week, the Biden administration filed responsive pleadings on that particular case. So I'm sure next time we get together, we'll have more of an update on that. But we're looking to obtain a preliminary injunction against that part of the mandate, the injection mandate, which remains as a result of the Supreme Court case a few months ago in the Missouri case that where the Supreme Court rejected in the 6-3 decision that they decided that the injection mandate against companies employing more than 100 or more employees was unconstitutional, and so that was struck down. And I'm happy to say that our team also had provided an amicus brief on that case that really was the bedrock of giving the justices the ability to make the decision they did in that case as well. So, and we've got more on tap, and so we're grateful we can work with such a great group of such a great team to bring about these consequences. Kevin, the people need to know when that decision was handed down on Monday regarding the mask mandate. I called our chief legal counsel, George Wentz, and who directed me to Stan, get this up on our Prosecute Now website immediately. Get it up on our Prosecute Now platform. Your truckers, the tribe, can go to prosecutenow.com to follow the legal updates and see the other things that we're doing for the people of this country. We wanted people to know. George told me specifically, he said, Stan, it's important that the people know that we can win. We can win against this overreaching federal government.
So, another thing that's just so amazing about this, I have been very, very vocal and outspoken from the very beginning. I read constantly. I finally gave up trying to read any kind of information coming out of the U.S. because it was almost non-existent or such a mess. You couldn't decipher it, and I had to start looking at other countries like Great Britain and Israel and all kinds of places that to find out what was really going on. With COVID itself, what's the real story with the vaccines, the lockdowns, what works, what doesn't work. And it became pretty clear to me early on that this was a disaster. I've been very outspoken. I believe I'm being attacked because of it. And my frustration was I knew a lot, and the more I knew, the more frustrated I got because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to fight back other than try to make as many people aware of this as I possibly can. We had to move our groups off Facebook because we were being so heavily censored. So we created our own group so we could say what we wanted. We, finally, I guess Sirius got tired of my stance on this, and they got rid of me. So we're creating our own platform for this network. We will not be dependent on anybody else's software to do this show. We're building our own. My only tool is just to talk about it and try to get more people aware of what's not being said everywhere else. And here, I had no idea that you are actually directly involved with your legal background and your connections, that you are able to do something about this, and you're doing it. So absolutely, let's get that website out there again, and let us know if there's any other way as a tribe we can support you in this.
Thank you, Kevin. One of the things we found is there's very few politicians in this country who have the either the integrity or the moral stamina to take a stand. It's political wins can be stiff. That's just the reality of it. But one of the things that we have done as a consequence of that reality is to create this platform, prosecutenow.com, and we'd appreciate support. What happens with what your tribe can do is go there, simply enter an email address and register with us so that we can communicate the progress that we're making, so they know that there's hope, and when we join together, we can win. Moreover, the actions they can take, they'll find their letters, what we call demand letters, that are conscientiously written, that they can choose. They simply choose the state they reside in, choose the letters that they'd like to communicate with about or to their state elected officials, to demand the appointment of special prosecutors and independent counsel to investigate what we regard as criminal behavior in this whole alleged pandemic nightmare we've been passing through for the last 2 years. Unless people are totally satisfied with the abundant transparency, of course I say that tongue in cheek, the lack of transparency and censorship of information in the country. So there's certainly a lot that we can do.
I don't know why you say that tongue in cheek. We only have to wait 75 years to find out what really happened in the vaccine testing. Come on.
Come on. I mean, just to find out just a simple ingredient list. I'm okay with 7 decades. How about you?
We're pretty healthy. I think we can make it. I think we can hold out. Oh my God. So again, I really, really want to support you in this a lot. You've helped us a lot. I want to try to give back, and I know our tribe will as well. I have received thousands of messages over the last couple of months. How can we support that? They're telling me, how can we support you more because of what's happened and, the groups that are coming after us. And I've said, look, just keep doing what you do. Keep listening to the show. Tell your friends about it. Support our store. And we think of that as a win-win-win for everybody. I mean, we're not selling foo-foo stuff in the store. We're not selling keychains and T-shirts. And the stuff you can buy in our store is really good for you in many ways. So, and they do. Our tribe's fantastic when it comes to that. So keep doing that. But here is another way that I don't ask our tribe often. They volunteer all the time. What can we do to help? And I don't ever want to take advantage of that. But when something this important comes along that they can help with, I really want to make sure they understand. So the website, prosecutenow.com, correct?
Correct.
So to everybody listening, you've been listening to me on this topic for a couple years. I know I have a lot of support. Here's a way that we can finally fight back. I've been saying I don't know what to do other than to keep talking about it. But I do need your help now. I want your help. We have a tool now, and we can win. We can fight back, and this is the best way I know of. So please go to Prosecute Now right now, prosecutenow.com. Get involved, find out what's there, and stay tuned. Put in your email address so we can reach you with this information. And Stanford and John, I'm going to let you go. I really appreciate your time today, and I do want to make this a pretty regular thing. I think there's just so much we can talk about, and together so much we can accomplish.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it. It's great to be with you. And as Stanford mentioned, I mean, Cardio Miracles, we're not a huge company. We're growing. We're seeing amazing success. But it just became apparent that if we didn't, it's sort of like we are they, if not us, who?
Yeah.
Well, we decided that we need to invest our resources, our personnel, which we've been doing now for 9 months in the Prosecute Now thing, because our country, other people gave their lives for our country. We can certainly give some of our resource to help try to save this wonderful place that has given us all so much.
Before it's too late.
Before it's too late.
Yes, I agree. Thank you guys so much. I could have never predicted this was where the show was going today, but I'm so glad it did. And I feel a whole lot more optimistic about a lot of things, about helping drivers with the more health issues than we've been able to before with Cardio Miracle, about talking again about some of these other topics. Food sustainability is another whole show I'd love to do. The political issues around this. So I just try to clear some time in your schedule for me, and I'd love to get you back.
Yeah, we're all in. Thank you.
All right, perfect. All right, we will, as much as I hate to let you guys go, I'm having a lot of fun with this. I'm going to cut you loose. We will be in touch